This is Talking Ears. I'm Frank Wardinger, music audiologist in Philadelphia. In this episode, Juan Vasquez and I were able to sit down with Darin Atwater. He's a composer, conductor, pianist, producer, and educator, perhaps best known as the founder and leader of Soulful Symphony. Soulful Symphony is an ensemble of over 80 members that combines orchestra, vocalists, elements of jazz, gospel, R&B, hip-hop, all to create dynamic and culturally resonant works. At the age of 23, he made his orchestral debut when he performed his own piano concerto with the National Symphony Orchestra. In 2000, he formed Soulful Symphony in Baltimore. And from 2004 to 2007, he served as composer-in-resident with the Baltimore Symphony and served as guest conductor and composer with several other major symphonies, including Dallas Symphony, Memphis Brass, Philadelphia Orchestra, Columbus Symphony, and the Jazz at Lincoln Center under Wynton Marsalis. He currently serves as distinguished visiting faculty at the Peabody Conservatory, and he served as the artistic director of the Monterey Jazz Festival. That is, until a personal injury last year made him reassess his time and creative focus. In this episode, we'll be hearing selections from the Soulful Symphony's 2009 release, Song in a Strange Land. We'll hear Darin talk about the interplay between identity and wellness for musicians, and how recovery from a serious injury has informed his engagement with students, ensembles, and audiences. But first, let's start at the very beginning and ask Darin how he first got interested in music.
I started playing piano when I was 4. My grandmother sent us a Wurlitzer upright piano. From Chapel Hill, North Carolina. She really sent it up for my older sister who was studying early classical piano. Eventually, I just jumped on the piano and sort of found my way organically. So I played by ear a lot, but it was sort of a magical moment as others, talk about it almost 50 years later. Something becomes sort of mythic and legend as you get older. You were 4 and you were playing Beethoven, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I grew up around, the soundtrack of my life was music. Grew up playing in the church, played trumpet. And then later, I went to Morgan State University, was a part of the world famous Morgan State University choir. We sang all around the world. It was probably the unique thing about Morgan State's choir is that we sang with symphony orchestras. We sang at the White House. We were almost like if it was a Pac-5 Division I football team. We were the stars on campus because we were just sort of everywhere. But I didn't think about music as a profession until I went to Morgan. I went on an accounting scholarship because my dad was like, I didn't have any professional musicians in my immediate family. So the idea, I had musicians, but, they played in jazz clubs, but they had a job. And so the idea of sort of pursuing music as a profession was completely outside of my sphere of influence or something I even sort of had ambition or desire to do. Sure. So I went as a accounting scholarship, and my cousin was there studying vocal. She was a voice major, and she said, "I want to introduce you to Dr. Carter, who was the chairman of the department." And I went and I said, "Okay, whatever." And I played for him and I sang for him. He was like, "What in the world are you doing, studying account?" I remember like it's yesterday. And he was a strong figure in choral music and in the African-American tradition. And he had such a presence. He had like a gravelly voice like Miles Davis. He was an amazing man. So I said, if you can convince my dad into allowing me to change my majors, we're all in. So he said, okay, I got you. He called my dad. And, the thing I think my dad respected about Dr. Carter was that, this is a gentleman who went to Hampton Institute, went to Peabody, went to Juilliard. Right. He didn't know that was sort of a pathway to become sort of this professional, not just a musician or entertainer, but there was a lot of gravitas behind his educational pathway and what he was doing in terms of institution building for students. So I changed my major and I was a piano major and I studied all the classics, well on my way to being sort of a classical pianist. In the middle of that, I got a call, growing up in church from a very famous gospel artist that asked me to go on the road with him. So I was sort of going on the road playing with the gospel artists in class, still studying. And I'll fast track. I got an invitation to work with Wynton Marsalis. Yeah. And I was at Blues Alley. I met him. And I knew at that point I wanted to sort of start composing. Morgan didn't have a composition program, so I started sort of self-study, all the scores I could buy, all the CDs at that time I could buy. And I would go to the symphony and just listen. That was sort of my lab. And I ran into a gentleman who knew my professor, and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm working on orchestral work." And he said, "Well, we're doing AT&T has sponsored sort of an outreach program." And they selected me. I was 23 at the time. My first piece was commissioned and performed by the National Symphony Orchestra.
Wow. And this is 95?
This was 95, 94, 95. And that sort of set me on the trajectory. And two things happened that day. I was scared out of my pants because I didn't know what I didn't know. When I applied later to Peabody, my professors looking at my portfolio and they were like, how did you get your work performed by a major symphony orchestra? We've been sort of composition teachers for 20, 30 years, and we haven't had our works performed. But a couple of things happened on that performance. I noticed that, sort of there was a dearth of representation of people of color.
Sure.
So I was the composer, much less a composer in the canon of Western, European music. Mm-hmm. But the thing that really struck me was that, it hit me like a lightning bolt, that American symphony orchestras and our classical arts are still tethered to the European canon.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So we're wildly American about everything else in our culture, except for our classical arts. Mm-hmm. I say if we came here and only invented baseball, only played cricket and golf and never invented baseball, and those things make us wildly American. Yeah. And so every other culture uses their folk music as their classical music. Mm-hmm. Like, we don't know this, but all of Mozart is sort of Austrian folk music.
Yeah.
And they were writing for imperial balls. It was dance music. It was sort of that kind of thing. And so hundreds of years later, we sort of feel like this music fell down from Elysium and it's a sacred cow. So I was like, how do we interject American music into the framework of the symphony orchestra?
Yeah.
And there's sort of been jabs at it with Gershwin and Bernstein and that kind of thing. But that sort of became my mission. So I left there and I started my own orchestra called Soulful Symphony, which is largely African-American, but we do everything else except for classical music. Over the last 25 years, we've done a hip hop symphony, bluegrass, country, rock and roll, gospel, jazz, just the whole gamut of American roots music. So the last 25 years, I've sort of been shepherding my own organization, and, sort of in between there, I've worked with Wynton Marsalis, a lot of pop and gospel artists, and was the artistic director of the Meriwether Post Pavilion here in Columbia, Monterey Jazz Festival. So I've also been involved in the larger arts community as a cultural leader. Last year, I was in Nepal doing a global music conference for sort of higher education in Europe and around the world. And I was there doing the keynote address. And we're 90 miles south of the Himalayas in a forest. Beautiful, beautiful place. And we're right inside of nature. There was a monkey that walked up and took someone's waffle and everybody's WhatsApping, sending a video around. How cute, how cute. So really quickly, I went into my hotel room. We were about to go sightseeing. And our two glass doors, like sliding glass doors behind me. And I saw somebody coming in. I was like, is it maintenance? Are they sort of cleaning the windows? What's going on? And a monkey jumped in my room.
Oh.
Jumped on the table. I tried to hit the window, jumped away, and my finger was dislocated. I looked down and my finger was like over here.
Oh my.
And for 10 seconds, I forgot about him and popped it in. He jumped off, was approaching me. I was trying to get out of the room. I can talk about this now. It's pretty traumatic for the first 9 months or so.
Yeah.
He came in to grab sugar. They had renovated the property 2 years ago and they got used to coming into the rooms. So security came up and it was like, nah, he just came to get sugar. It was the species of monkey where you saw the female, and when you see a male, it's like double the size.
Sure.
He was a big guy. So I went to a very exceptional orthopedic hospital in the middle of Nepal. They gave me a splint. I came home, went to Hopkins. They put me in the cast for 8 weeks. They thought it was just a bruise. Saw the MRI, and my UCL, which is like your ACL in your thumb, was completely torn.
And this is your right hand.
My dominant hand. Yeah. Our UCL was completely torn. I had to have emergency surgery 2 days before Christmas. And literally, for the first time in my life, the surgery went well. And for the first 3 months, they were just trying to get my thumb to move maybe 10 centimeters. Yeah. If I could get there in 3 months, then picking up marbles. I mean, all the things that you see sort of with sports medicine and athletes.
I saw a video of you online that you posted of you just like moving a coin. It looked like you were doing like some Herculean effort. It looked like you were climbing Everest.
Bro, thank you. It was amazingly difficult and challenging.
Sure.
And that's just the physicality and the structural aspect of it. But as I, mentioned in the conference, it was sort of the psychosocial aspect of it and the identity, sort of amputating and severing my identity, which has been through music my entire life. You start to question some very basic things about, sort of who you are and what your place is in the world without the thing that defines you, much less is sort of the source of your livelihood, but how you relate, embed yourself in a larger community and a larger public sphere.
Yeah.
Was something that was super challenging for me.
I hope that you can talk more about the recovery there too. You're obviously back at playing, right? And this was a year and a half ago?
Yeah, it'll be a year next month.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
So I'm not fully back to playing. Yeah. I would say I'm shooting layups, at the free throw line.
Yeah.
But nothing to, I have some progress to go.
Did you hit a point in the physical therapy where the therapist said, oh, you're back at kind of like normal function, but you still notice a difference?
Yeah, unlike athletes, musicians, we don't have a specialty equivalent to sports medicine aligned to sort of the daily routines. So 8 weeks in, they said, oh, you returned to work. And I said, well, no, I have to, it's not just putting my fingers down. I have to tuck my thumb under my third fingers and scalar things. There's so many sort of complex things that goes with being a musician. So I had to sort of backtrack and help actually educate them. And that's where my work came in with, sort of my whole return to play. The whole protocol for me as a musician was completely different than anyone else that they had sort of worked with. Mm-hmm. So I had to co-design my own protocols for return to play. Yeah. Load management. I mean, just, everything is so fragmented across PT and ENT. And there's sort of no streamlined, integrated health management care for musicians. So, and with that, they asked me to sort of be a part of these panels. And I've been really instrumental in sort of helping to introduce other musicians to, sort of what I've been going through. But it was tough,
And we hear about this a lot, like with our hearing work, we hear about musicians who have tinnitus or hearing loss, which, 10% of the population has tinnitus, but it's affecting the musicians so differently than the general population. So they feel written off so often. They feel like people say, yeah, you're fine, get back to work. And they say, I can't master an album with my ears like this. And then one of us has to step in and be like, oh, we can help because we actually understand what you're going through. And I like how you put that, the kind of redefining what return to work means. It doesn't mean being able to type on a keyboard and drive a car. It means doing the most complicated fingering on a piano possible.
And it does make you, to your point, I'm glad you brought up that hearing part, because it makes you, I was so much aware of the wellness of my, every aspect of myself. So I was able to sort of zoom out. And that whole thing you're talking about with, sort of the embedded hearing and vocal stewardship. Mm-hmm. And that's load management that you find a lot of that in classical musicians and the classical world. They have shield sounds. They're very, very sensitive because the music has such a dynamic range of, the softest to the very loudest. In our vernacular practices, we don't have that hearing safe orchestration. Those even we don't have the education in terms of even how we load manage ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So it just made me sort of take a step back, just from an auditory perspective, and be more sensitive to every aspect of my wellness.
That's huge.
And it's just benefited me a lot. Yeah.
It does seem like there's a lot of parallels with kind of like a physical injury to an instrumentalist with their hand, to their way in which they engage with the music, that is their hearing, But I think oftentimes the hearing part gets ignored a little bit because it's invisible. But there also might be this negative stigma, or there's this perception of that individual because, well, they can't hear anything anymore anyway. So, and if they can't perform with an injured hand, then what does that do to that musician, right? What is that process like?
Yeah, I think that the whole design, the whole ecosystem is fragmented and it's reactive. Sort of the musician has to say something's going on, but we don't create environments where we're sort of in front of, hey, let's make sure, specifically, and like I said, in these like American Roots, you do a rock gig or a hip hop gig. I mean, they got inner ears. Just there's no protocols.
There's no protocol.
Nobody says like these are the protocols that you need to set up to sort of be safe and healthy.
Mm-hmm.
We want to safeguard against your own personal wellness and health. And the ear, to your point, is one of the last spaces where we sort of have to self-govern again.
Well, I think when you're learning, when you're training piano, cello, whatever instrument, a lot of the effort that we put into technique is really injury prevention, right? Mm-hmm. Learn to use your shoulders this way. Learn to hold your hands in this position so you don't hurt your wrists after 8 hours of practicing a day. And we kind of forget then that all those technical aspects of preventing injury also apply to your ears. And I think that's why I was really motivated. That conversation that we had at PAMA, I can't say this enough. You really added a perspective that was so helpful to that conversation, because it's a lot of mostly physicians explaining how musculoskeletal issues are treated and whatnot. And then you stepped up and said, here's what it did to me, my life, my career, my outlook. Here's what coming back from that looks like and felt like. And it really made the room kind of stop and take this out of just like this clinical, sterile approach and say well, Darin needs to keep making music. We need to keep hearing Darin's music. So now I have a face to the thing. So I really appreciated that perspective that you brought, really.
Yeah, and my takeaway is healthcare and health integrated for musicians is a precondition for all the innovation that takes place and the creativity that takes place. You know, we sort of think of post-injury and sort of reactive again, but if we could set up some guardrails and some safeguards and some education that allows musicians to sort of understand some of those, pitfalls and potholes that you might anticipate.
Sure.
Having injury or not. And again, I say there's the protocols are not in place for rehearsals, load management. I have friends that play on Broadway and they're doing 3 or 4 doubles. It's just a wear and tear that you just don't really, really realize. And I see it a lot in classical music, but I don't see it in other aspects of the creative industries.
it is unsustainable after a certain point.
Yes, absolutely.
Because we're asking these people to do something that the body was just not designed to do, right? Exposed to these number of hours with those repetitive movements, these number of hours in awkward positions, these number of hours being exposed to levels that exceed what nature ever thought that they could put out. Juan and I spent some time this week listening to your music. We went through, we listened to the really fabulous PBS special, the songs.
Oh, yeah.
Song in a Strange Land.
Song in a Strange Land, yeah.
That is, I know that it influenced a lot of people over the last couple decades.
Absolutely, yeah.
It looks and sounds so incredible. But what you're making is not tame and quiet music, right? You're standing in front of a full drum set. There's electric guitar. There's electric bass. There's a 30-piece gospel choir that
that's right.
When they got strong, man, they got strong.
Yeah, for sure.
So how are you caring for your ears through that? And has that been a thought that you've had throughout this time, or is it really a consideration that you're having more recently?
More recently, and the more that I work, I do my work with Soulful Symphony, but also I was commissioned by the Philadelphia Orchestra twice.
Yeah, go Philly.
And just, I was in, I was composer in residence with the BSO here in Baltimore. And just by association, seeing how intensely rigorous the environment that they set up for classical musicians, not only in terms of having to hear the music, but just the safeguards again. It made me, again, take a look at, when we're dealing with this fiery sonic universe that I'm creating. So what is the place of my ear? Because my ear is just as important as my hands. And it's, everything is ear. I learned how to play by ear, before there was notation and the whole literacy thing. I was just sort of ear, playing by ear. So I think it's a world that I'm sort of becoming more sensitive to in terms of the care and the maintenance of that. I was at a friend invited me to, I grew up in DC, so go-go is really big in DC, go-go music. Yeah. And it's like on a 20, it's just like 3 hours, bang, 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 bang. And I noticed, around 20 minutes or so, I went to the back of, the arena because my friend was like, what's going on? I was like, man, I can't sit in front of these amps for 3 hours. It's going to, sort of destroy me. So just little things like that, having to, I think dealing with in an acoustic space with string players and that you have to learn the range, the dynamic range, and become more sensitive. Yeah. And the more you become more sensitive to that, I think it just sort of creates a space for you to just be more proactive in terms of what that means for your health in terms of the ears.
The way that you put that of, there's these fun things, there's these things that are institutions, there's really loud, wonderful music that's available, but we have to take a moment and step back and at some points just say, these are important, right? I've got work to do with these later. Yeah. The same way that we would treat like our feet, our hands, absolutely. Right? My dad always told this joke when I was growing up, we would be doing woodworking and he would say, oh, be careful with that. That's your piano playing hand. Which is, funny because you got two of them. Yeah. But I think we were using power tools without earmuffs while he was telling me that joke, right? That's your piano playing ears too, aren't they?
Yeah. My new mantra to the chorus and to the orchestra now is like a low summer will still burn you. It's still hot. So we don't have to flame up. It's like, don't be afraid of the low heat still cooks. Yeah. So I'm a bit more sensitive to all of it.
I like that.
And I think audiences, we've gotten to learn how to really listen.
Mm-hmm.
Listening is an art. And I think with everything sort of being right in your face, we've forgotten what it is to have to appreciate the nuances of the dynamism of the range of sound.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean that we can't use the full range, right? And I think that's one thing that really struck me with your concert was when it got loud, it got great and loud.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the whole time, right? It's peaks and valleys, and it's contrast, it's bright and light and dark. Those loud moments are only impactful because they were preceded by like some of the most beautiful, quiet, subtle, sensitive stuff, and then bam.
Yeah, absolutely.
Back to this parallel with that physical injury and then kind of a little bit more awareness or focus into your hearing. Has that been an influence with your music moving forward, or maybe even more of an advocacy role in taking a look at holistic musicians' health?
Yeah, I'm never the same. I'll never be the same. I mean, I can't look at myself. I don't look at the industry, the work that I do, because I am a conductor and a sort of a convener of 100 musicians that, I feel like it's almost my mission to also advocate and bring awareness, talking to, musicians in my circle. And I'm like, have you ever thought about sort of the wear and tear? What is it like when you come off tour? What is it like when you're on tour? What is it? And I'm telling you, they've never considered the fact that they could sort of have some anticipatory management, education, and or maintenance, some sort of continual maintenance and sort of check-in and assessments. So I think of my mission I was sort of thrust into is being an advocate and sort of using my platform, but also using my experience. I mean, what I went through is a very vulnerable thing to share. Yeah. Because the other side of it, and I talk to my PT team about this a lot, when an athlete tears an ACL, we hear about it so much that it's like, oh, he'll be back, right?
Yeah.
When I was sort of vulnerable and shared, they were like, is he ever going to play again? Like there's no sort of, we sort of live in this sort of quiet background. We're afraid to sort of come from, because what does that mean?
Yeah. To
sort of the hiring practices. Is somebody going to think I can so just sort of dealing with the vulnerability, but the reality of that, but also the education. And I think the more that I'm able to share, the more that other musicians are able to actually begin to advocate for themselves. And I think it becomes sort of a infrastructure for more musicians and to sort of advocate. And now we create a wave that sort of we can't be ignored type of thing.
That's beautiful.
But it's super intentional for me, not only for my own protocol and my own sort of wellness, but those around me.
Yeah. Well, and you're in a position now too. You're in a couple positions where you're able to not dictate, but promote your positive agenda here, right? You now the artistic director is the title of the Monterey Jazz Fest. It's the oldest jazz fest in the world.
Oldest jazz, longest running. They like to say longest running.
Sure.
So I sort of took hiatus even from that, from just dealing with, because I was very aggressive with my PT. So this year has sort of been all of that creative work for me. Sort of got put on the shelf.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Are you returning to it?
Yeah. We'll see. That the injury really opened my eyes to some other pathways that I want to potentially explore.
Sure.
Yeah.
The other position that I'm aware of is at Hopkins, right? Tell me about what that role is, because you're listed as distinguished professor. Which just sounds...
faculty. Yeah.
How many tweed arm jackets do you own to be a distinguished professor? Is that the requirement?
That's good. Yeah, maybe one.
Okay. I gotta go get myself a jacket.
Yeah. No, I went to Peabody. I studied there for a year as a composer. And 97, I applied and got accepted. So this is almost like a bookend to my time as a student. a lot of my work with Soulful Symphony has been used in institutions and universities across the country. I have friends at IU, major conservatories, who sort of are, they're doing master's theses. So I'm getting calls. I got asked, Peabody is doing an institutional pivot where they're sort of trying to adopt more American roots as a framework, because the world that students are inhabiting now, and this is what was my pitch, is not the world that even I was inhabiting.
Yes.
So they're playing everything. They're playing pop, they're playing covers, they're playing Broadway, and if they're not playing it, they're exposed to it all the time. So seeing classical musicians and classical instruments strictly for the classical canon, it's just, kids see a violin now, they're like, oh, I can play hip hop on this, or I can play country or whatever. So I've sort of been brought back to sort of help, one, as a sort of design it for the institution, and as we pivot to sort of embrace more American roots music, but also sort of making sure that we are auditing our curriculum and our repertoire, that it sort of speaks to the history of, our American vernacular music and roots music inside studying that goes along with, of course, the classical. So yeah, I'm doing American Roots, and I'm about to do a big lecture series at the DC Bloomberg campus on American Roots. So it'll be like a 12 movement lecture series over a couple of years. I'm going to sort of go from the spiritual to modern music, hip hop, soul, all of it.
That's incredible.
So I'm excited about it. I love teaching. I didn't know how much I was going to love it, but I'm not sure I would have been as present with it had my injury. So it's interesting how that's all worked out.
There's that old saying about doors opening and closing that I've never understood, but clearly it's applying, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. There's some rudder that was like, oh, this way.
Yeah. It also strikes me that, in your position now, like you're in front of the orchestra, you have your symphony, the Soulful Symphony. You have a huge influence over those individuals in a big way, and now students as well. And being able to share this perspective can only do positive good, right? Both from a musical perspective, because as you mentioned, there's this rich history of blending vernacular American music with symphonies. I mean, you mentioned Copland and, Gershwin.
Right,
there's also Florence Price and William Grant Still. There's some incredible history there. But to make that, I'm getting like shivers just thinking about it, but to make that the standard instead of the exception is such a powerful motion, right?
Yeah, I mean, that gets to so many aspects of our American culture in terms of coming to terms with how we were formed, I mean, even out of, sort of tragic and horrific beginnings, there is sort of no way to get around the influence of, African-American, Native American influence in our arts. And as long as we sort of avoid that and relegated it to the margins, we're not as strong as a culture.
Yeah.
Our music is not as strong. And it's easy to sort of commercialize it and sort of put it in its buckets. But I think we're just a stronger culture when we embrace those truths. And we always go through these, like with the Florence Price thing you mentioned, it's like it was 1933 and she, wrote that symphony, it was performed in Chicago. And it's this new age of discovery. Yeah. It's the same kind of thing. And a lot of it is survival techniques because audiences are dying out.
Sure.
And so I'm really intentional about that and understanding all the social dynamics of it. But to your point, I mean, those are our treasure troves to build, sort of scaffold out our music in all of its forms, whether it's popular, whether it's commercial, whether it's our classical arts. So much more of that in terms of, that's sort of my mission, is to continue to show and show a pathway in terms of how it all comes together.
That's incredible. Yeah, I grew up in Rochester, New York. So we, Eastman Music, School of Music there.
Oh, yeah. I went there and I was like, it's too cold up here.
Oh, it's super cold. I mean, I'm not there anymore, so that says something.
Yeah.
But like we grew up like learning about, William Grant Still, and because he had a huge connection with Rochester Philharmonic.
That's right.
And there's this deep, rich history there. And then I went to undergrad in New York City, and they're all like, who? And you forget like crazy, how kind of regionalized some things become.
Yeah.
Speaking of regionalism, I mean, you're like the mayor of Baltimore, essentially, right? You have the keys to the city.
I got the key to the city last year. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
You often, it's weird to have, they say the prophet is without honor in his own hometown.
Yeah.
That's never been the case. I was born in DC, and there's always been some tension between, folks who are from DC and Baltimore, but I've been in Baltimore so long. And I think just my work beyond the stage, I say the stage is a place where you come to inspire people. The community is where people are really transformed. So I've always embedded myself into the fabric of my community, like very intentionally. So they see me as someone that's not just a guy that's putting on concerts, that's a guy that does symphonies, but I'm really, we went into schools. I do master classes, hundreds of schools over the years. So to see the city sort of acknowledge that was, beyond a highlight for me in my career. But it also makes you reaffirm that same purpose and that mission to continue to sort of knock on those doors and make opportunities for the next generation. And when we're in a space where our classical artists and people are not listening to, critical thinking, they're sitting through a concert at the symphony is not as easy or digestible today. So I'm just, trying to continue to work on that and create opportunities for others and create a space that, we don't lose that tradition as well.
Just amazing. Your mission as Song in a Strange Land, particularly, the venue, the space reminds me of just the classical symphony, but what you actually hear is so unique, and it's just driven by passion and culture. I mean, every track is just so different. I mean, it can sound like an avant-garde thing, some sort of old indigenous tribal thing, but then you also hear gospel, and it's just the way that you combine all that, and that's just carried through in the performance, driven by your mission, but I can also feel that resonating with your mission and making sure that the next generation has that kind of appreciation, but that outlook as well and that perspective. So I think that's just amazing.
Yeah, you characterized it perfectly. And that was sort of the goal behind it is, how do we take this, there's no African-American music without this collision of Europe and Africa, right? So I have to say, I say that all the time, like you don't have American music without the collision of these two cultures.
Yeah.
And so my mission is like, so how do we continue to adapt, and digest that, but also synthesize it in a way that honors all those streams. And that's just something, like you said, it's just been intentional for me to make sure it's something that we have a thread back to, but also using it as like the beautiful thing about American music is like the Americans, the Great American Songbook. Any standard is never the same. It's just a lead sheet.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not rigid. It's not static. It's like, how do we improvise on something as a community, as a collective?
Yeah.
And what sonic documents can I sort of put in place where they're true to its original, right? But it's also leaves room for extension and interplay and improvisation and the next voice. And that's what Song in a Strange Land was for me. It's like, so how do we apply the blues on this? How do we apply gospel? How do we apply rock and roll? So the confluence of all of these not only pays homage to our sonic beginnings, but it's also saying that, hey, the symphony orchestra is ripe for adaptation.
Yeah.
And we don't have to stay static and stuck in a 1750s model, but we can continue to innovate. How do we innovate structurally without losing sort of that framework?
I think I was really struck when I was listening to that. I like the word confluence, like, because I was trying to wrap my head around a couple selections, pieces that would start somewhere, right? Like there's one that started with the hand percussion, and then it morphed. There was no clear line between styles or genres. It just morphed as a new thing came in, and it just became a more colorful shape until it was something that I couldn't point at and say that's gospel or that's jazz or that's a symphony. I just had to go, I like this. I don't know what else to say. It's just that's also a great perspective. And I think that's just my immersing myself into those traditions. I don't think that's something that you can learn on the back end, or because it becomes sort of artificial and sort of superficial in an attempt. And so I think that's me being immersed in each of those genres and being very serious about studying each one of those traditions. And that takes a long time to sort of to take that in and be able to sort of create something that does exactly what you're saying. And that's what I hear a lot about with my music, is it's like, it seems very, it's like, how does that work? But it works, this kind of thing. Yeah. I don't know how to say this without offending other people, but it's so obvious when you listen to some composition and they're like, I'm going to put in a jazz thing here.
Right.
And it just feels like they just like taped like a little jazz lick on top of like, and it's like, no, you should have just not.
Yeah.
Because your cartoon of what you thought jazz or gospel or blues or whatever is just not. Maybe that's the best way to put it. There's a lot of honesty and authenticity of intent there that comes across.
And that's very good for me. That's fuel for me, because you would think that I get a lot of feedback in terms of, that's been 25 years since I composed that. But the world is so formulaic, and to position, like you're saying, wow, maybe next year I'll have a real document of all of these works that I've composed over the last 25 years. There's really no space for that sort of this soundscape that I've created. So to get feedback from the way that you all are giving me feedback today is fuel for me, because you can't play Soulful Symphony in a space where it's digested the way that sort of you're receiving it feedback. It sort of has to sit. It
doesn't fit on TikTok.
Yeah, it sits out in the margin somewhere and has to be experienced. And the world's catching up to it. I composed that in 97. And we recorded it in PBS during the economic downturn in 2008. It was supposed to be live, like at the Meyerhoff in front of an audience, but we went in the studios of Maryland Public Television, and it still somehow resonates, because I say it's still best experienced live. So that's another aspect of it. And then just the expense it takes to stage a symphony orchestra, just to put us on stage and record is.
Well, look, it looks expensive, which I think I mean that as a compliment, but but it's clearly like I do want to swing it back around then to Philly, because the Man, you did two things that I so badly want to hear them, and we spent a good amount of time hunting for them. The Black Metropolis, and also your rendition of West Side Story, the South Side. My ears are so hungry to hear those. Hearing you pull Philly people into it, and Philly Orchestra has such a big history there too. But like,
oh my God, yes.
Like where can people find those things, and how can we hear it after the fact? Because I know they were live productions.
Yeah. So we did South Side for the Bernstein Centennial, and again, I wanted to sort of, not a true adaptation, but I wanted to use the framework. I love the frame and the forms and the devices of the classical tradition. So they just sort of suit themselves for I'm more of a narrative composer. I like to come from big narrative ideas and then sort of shape the music around that. So West Side Story was right in line with me sort of doing a homage to that, but like South Side and all the things that happens in our spaces. And then Black Metropolis is probably everything I've learned for the last 25 years in the work. I mean, it's probably my Magnus opus. Yeah. We're going to record that next year with the Major Symphony Orchestra.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really excited about documenting that. It has so much inside of it.
That's amazing.
So next year, it'll be in the public domain. You'll be able to check it out on all the platforms, as we say.
One thing about your story that really kind of resonated with me, and back to kind of the hearing aspect of what we do, I spend a lot of time trying to speak with audiologists and folks in the hearing realm about how important musicians' hearing is. And I'll hear from some people who aren't yet on the board with that, who are saying, well, yeah, but it's just play. It's just music. It's just, everybody likes to play guitar. Like, if you can't play guitar, oh, well. And I have to remind them how important for society what you do is. That we wouldn't have a society and we wouldn't be able to talk to each other and connect our histories and connect our cultures and our communities and our families without this bridge that you know, people who are able to create these artworks make. You're building bridges and I mean, to probably an equal state, also just making people happy when they're listening to it. Like both of those two things are highly important. I'm not sure if you have a reflection on that and what you would tell to people who might not immediately respect or appreciate kind of the value of the arts and of the artist.
Yeah, I say our national identity, our mythology, it masquerades as entertainment, right? It's like our storytelling, our humanity. You know, I always say when you leave a Soulful Symphony concert, I want you to go away with the possibilities of greatness in your own life. I think that's what great art does. It sort of places you in a domain where you can sort of sit and imagine the possibilities of that. That's what that inspiration is. You walk away and you're so inspired by it. But I think the more we can look at creative industries and our creatives' lives as infrastructure for all the things, the polarity and political, it's a place that brings us together for social cohesion. It's a common ground. So I always sort of look and try to position the arts and creativity and creators and what I do as a place that allows us to sort of come together and experience, I say, explore, affirm, celebrate all the great things about who we are as humans. And that sort of is our collective storytelling is inside of our music. That's what's so important. I say, 100, 200 years from now, they'll say, what is our culture like? Like I always say, you go to Rome to see the culture, whether it was republic or whatever political state. You go to the Aztecs to see the culture. You go all over the world to see culture. You don't remember what sort of governing body, what their political state was, what their social constructs were. You know that this people left us this grand culture, right? And if we commercialize, if we value our culture through the marketplace, we're sort of in danger of leaving relics of what we could have become. I think just there's so much more depth in our ability to create culture that still doesn't have to be esoteric and removed. Yeah. I think people can ascend to things that are profound. And I think we don't give ourselves enough credit in terms of our popular and our national conversations around art and what we sort of expose ourselves to. I always say we don't necessarily in America know who our greatest artists are. We know who the ones who are packaged and commercialized.
Yes.
there's someone in the Mississippi Delta, there's someone in the Northeast that is an amazing blues. They're just an amazing singer, they're an amazing composer, but because they can't sort of track themselves in this commercial lives, sort of market-bearing arts format we have here in America, it just makes us so Soulful Symphony. That's also been a burden to sort of know that you're going to sort of you're going to remain outside of that system.
Yeah.
I mean, the system is not designed for that sort of, so, you have to create sort of other spaces and other cultures and create and cultivate your community.
That is very true.
Inside of it. Yeah.
It's like how many Robert Johnsons are there out there that we'll just never hear?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I will say that on the YouTube video of Song in a Strange Land, the number one comment that you'll find is somebody who says, we had the DVD of this. Like, so the commodity of it, I think, can still exist. It's just so different.
That's a great point.
It's so different.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
That's a great point because the PBS machine, the pledging,
Huh.
It was sort of, that was the machine through which people were able to access the DVD. Yeah. Yep. So there are mechanisms for it.
Mm-hmm.
I think we just have to be more creative with sort of finding ways to document it. The big thing for me, it's like, if you're in something doing it, you don't look back and say, oh, that's right, I need to archive this, or it needs to be documented in a way. And I think that's a big part of even my migration around sort of cultural leadership at Monterey or other places. Like, I need to make sure that my work is documented.
Before I get to the question, I just wanted to just kind of geek out about a little quote that you had said in one of your interviews that, and I think that you have this perspective that music can and should be ritual. It's like this. The art, that music, right, is the stylization of the human experience. And with that engagement, I thought it was one of the most beautiful things that I have ever heard, because that kind of conceptualizes what I think about music can and should be. It has the power and the potential to do so much for the individual. So going back to what you hope the audience leaves after a Soulful Symphony concert, it's that potential. What did that art just do to you? And I think that it's so surreal. I can't really put words to that idea there. So thank you.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think, again, we've sort of created this line of demarcation with audience members or our listening community as consumers, and we're producers. And we forget that, as an artist, when we're sort of in a space that we're performing, I feel like we are being informed as artists just as much as we're informing. Like the feedback and the energy in the space and the ritual that we're experiencing is a very special thing. And that can only happen, it can't happen in silos. It has to happen when we collectively come together to experience and affirm sort of who we are. And the music is an opportunity to sort of set the stage for that.
Yeah,
it has to be intentional.
Well, thank you for that. And thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us. This was a fantastic conversation. One thing that we do like to ask everybody, and take a moment to think about it if you've never been asked this question before, but the question we have for you, what is your favorite sound?
I've been asked a million things in my life, and I've never been asked that. Wow. I would say the sound of my orchestra.
Yeah.
I love the sound of Soulful Symphony. And I know that sounds really utilitarian or something that's removed from being so specific, but there's something about when we come together that's just, it's nothing like that sound that we have when we're on stage in a certain moment or a certain that sound is, I have not heard that replicated anywhere.
Yeah.
Same instruments that another symphony may have, voices. But there's something about that sound that sort of when we come together, that's super, super unique. And I'm more in love with it now than I ever have been. I'm itching to hear it again soon.
I love that. That's beautiful. I mean, I would imagine that sound is probably the favorite to some of your orchestral members too, but
sure,
no doubt.
Yeah.
But I would imagine that sound actually creates something else within you that we can't really describe.
Yeah. That's so true. And it lit a fire in me because I hadn't thought about it. That question never been posed to me, but now that I'm saying it and I'm thinking about what that is and how much the community, I'm talking about like in the region when they're like, we miss that sound.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they say. I miss, I had one of my chorus members on Facebook, someone did a rendition of our songs and they said, wow, it makes me miss our sound. It makes me miss what we do. I've never heard anybody else attempt to do it, but it makes me now miss what we have. But it only happens when we come together. It's hard to recreate outside of those forces. And it's not just a vocal, it's the lives, it's the story, it's the experience that we all bring to that sound.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty in it. That was a beautiful question. No, that question is going to stick with me for a long time. That resonates on many levels. So I carry that away from this conversation. Thank you.
Again, Darin, thank you so much. This has been...
Thank you, Juan.
I really do appreciate the time.
I also appreciate the optimism that you're presenting here, because saying that the culture and the music is outside of the current climate of whatever we find ourselves in, as far as what's happening in literally the people in charge, the government, whatever it happens to be, none of that changes what is America and what we are as a people. And I'm going to take that with me into the weekend. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm honored to be with you today. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Talking Ears is a production of Earmark Hearing Conservation and Philadelphia Music Audiology. The show is produced by Juan Vasquez and Mary Kim, and the theme music is by Scott Hallam. This episode, just as much as any other, maybe more, shows that no musician or person should be injured when creating art and making the world a more beautiful place. If you've listened this far, I assume that you liked what you heard, or maybe your hands were too wet and soapy to turn this off while you're doing the dishes. Either way, go ahead and try to support the show. The biggest step that you can take is leaving us a review, but more importantly, share the show with your friends. You can also send us your questions, your suggestions for other guests and topics. You're the reason we make this podcast. We love hearing from you. So as always, thanks for listening.